Hi, it's Noelle CoStar here with Knowellness.com. Today I'm going to talk about how to clean and charge your crystals because I know they're very beautiful and many of you buy them and then you're like, what the heck do I do with them? Because I get a lot of emails and text about that very question. So the first thing you want to do is figure out how to separate them. So I like to put my larger crystals together in a dish, and I also separate all of the crystals that are dissolvable in water. So how do you figure out which ones dissolve in water? Well, if it ends in an ite, like celestite, that's a good way to start separating them. This one here, selenite, is highly water soluble. Now, I know some people actually dissolve selenite in water and then put their crystals in it to clean and charge them. That's not something I do. I also don't charge my crystals in salt water because, as you know, when you get in salt water leaves a residue all over you. So I don't want that all over the crystals that I'm working with all the time. Now, if you do want to charge your crystals in salt water, I would say do it for like 10 minutes and then rinse them. Make sure that you rinse them. They do get very cleansed from being with the salt water. I just wouldn't do it for very long, and you want to make sure you rinse them, okay? So I, most of the time, charge my crystals with spring water. And another way that you can use water is a lot of people use rainwater. I like to use spring water because I know that it's clean. I'm putting it in the dish and then I stick it into the sunlight. Now, sometimes if you want to put your crystals in rainwater, you would just put them in a dish and put them out there to be rained on. I don't recommend to people putting their crystals straight on the earth. I have seen the earth swallow the crystals, never to be found again. So you definitely want to make sure that you're putting them on some kind of a container or a platform just to make sure that you get them back at the end of your cleanse and charge cycle. So what do I have in my dish of crystals that are not going to be cleansed with water? I have things that are delicate, that have spikes. This here is a apophyllite, so I want to make sure that this doesn't break. Some crystals just loosen in water. They might not dissolve. So I'm also going to put my white chalcedony and fluorite because it ends in an ite, opalite, calcite. Some of these crystals are not water soluble, but I just always encourage people to put anything that ends in an ite in a separate dish. It's safer that way. So I'm just going to take my brown rice and I'm going to pour it directly over top of the crystals. Now I also have lapis lazuli in here. That's probably the only one in here that doesn't end in an ite. So now that I've covered it completely with rice, I'm going to place it in the sunlight and I'm going to allow it to charge for the next 12 to 24 hours. And then I'm going to take the crystals out and get rid of the rice. Do not recook this rice. Don't use this rice. It's cleansed all of the toxic energy into the rice, so you don't want to eat it. It will not make you feel well. Okay, so these are my bigger crystals, and there's a lot of crystals that fade in sunlight, like amethyst. However, the summer solstice is on Saturday. This is the most powerful solar energy day of the year. So I put all of my crystals out, all of them, even the ones that fade in the sunlight, because I want them to absorb all of this powerful energy. Now, I can't because I use them to work all the time, but I will keep putting crystals back outside every day for up to 2 weeks. So if you can leave your crystals outside for 2 weeks, do that. But after the first 24 hours, that's when I would take the ones that fade in the sunlight away. So amethyst is one of those that will fade in the sunlight, but things like smoky quartz, that's going to be okay, rose quartz, and all of your other crystals. I like to separate bigger crystals from smaller crystals. And then what I do is I pour spring water directly on it. You just want to make sure that they're completely submerged in the water. And then you just place it in the sunlight. If you have a really big crystal or anything that's, bigger than the size of your hand, how do you cleanse these? Well, the rainwater method is a good way if you want to sit these out on a platform touching the earth. However, if you don't know if it's going to rain because maybe you don't live in Florida where it rains every day, but if you don't, you could just sit it outside and just pour your spring water, give it a little spring water bath, and then leave it to charge on the earth for, like I said, up to 2 weeks. One thing that you definitely want to make sure that you have is some black tourmaline. This is what I use to grid around my house and to make a protective field around my space. So I want to teach you guys how to do that, but I think it's important that you get some, or maybe tiger's eye. Look up some crystals and see which one you feel drawn to, but I love black tourmaline for its protective properties. So get some, charge it up, and come back next month when I talk about protecting our space with our fully charged crystals.